Hello and welcome. This is rooflemonger, my friends. It's interview season around the fighting game community. So very recently on the channel, we had a bunch of interviews for the new Virtua Fighter Crossroads, and a lot more details for that game. And now we're doing much the same for Street Fighter 6. We got tons of news and tons of tasty tidbits about the future of Street Fighter, and I'll have all the various articles linked for you in the video description below. I do want to give a specific shout out to Virginia Glaze of Dexerto, as a lot of this does come specifically from her and her reporting. So we have a lot to talk about the various characters. We have to talk about 10 years of Street Fighter 6, right? So a lot to get into, but I guess let's start with the showstopper. Let's start with Tifa, because Tifa, even though, we sort of knew, it's still a very, very, very big deal. And turns out Tifa's been in the books for quite some time. Specifically, the ball started rolling on getting Tifa into Street Fighter 6 about 3 years ago. And you might say, well, wait a second, isn't Street Fighter 6 just turning 3 years old? Yeah, this stuff happens way in advance, turns out. Stating it was around the Tokyo Game Show at the time, which, if memory serves, that's also the same fated one that got Kenny Omega into the Alex role. And when asked why Tifa specifically, director Takayuki Nakayama says, while we can't talk about anything specific yet, but if the character is a good fit for a fighting game, meaning they translate well to that style of gameplay, there's definitely a strong possibility we can make it happen. And yes, frankly, Tifa is a good idea for a fighting game. That's why we've been on this for some years. Also stating if Ingrid is responsible for Tifa showing up. Takayuki Nakayama states here, the release still a ways off, so I can't go too much into details now, but Ingrid is a character whose backstory was reconstructed with the aim of expanding those kinds of possibilities, so you got a really good eye for that. And as someone who was saying from the start, Ingrid's the reason we're going to get guest characters, I feel pretty validated by that. And the way that is phrased makes me think, expect more guest characters from, non-fighting game properties. And then, well, there is the all-new characters. So many interviews talk about this, but basically, why all-new characters versus, say, returning classics? And in all these interviews, it's mentioned a few different aspects, but one surprising one is apparently Street Fighter is getting younger, not older. Street Fighter's always been like the old man's fighting game, and now that actually might be changing due to its popularity. So producer Matsumoto-san says here, traditionally, the core player base is in the 35 to 40 age range, and that's always been the largest segment, but now, due to Street Fighter 6's increasing popularity, that segment for the largest player base is now between 15 and 25. So that means if the average Street Fighter player is getting younger, that means I'm getting younger, right? That's how that works, right? But going on here, so for these new younger players, we want to support them by offering a fresh experience. And thus, we have the newcomers. Now, to me, if you're new to the game, then Ryu and Chun-Li are still new to you, so we don't necessarily always need new characters, but I get it, right? New characters are exciting, and Arjun specifically, I'm really excited for. But also adding, there hasn't been an actually all-new character added to the game since Aki in Season 1, so maybe we're a little bit overdue. And they also want to add new representation to the game that hasn't been added yet. So that's why specifically here, Yasmine is from the Philippines. Filipino support for fighting games is gigantic, yet in Street Fighter, there's never been a Filipino rep. So they've gone out of their way to change that. And let me tell you, that stuff matters to me. I'm Canadian. There is not many Canadians in fighting games. So when Abigail came out for Street Fighter 5, that meant a lot to me, especially because look at him. He's basically the perfect human being. This is the ideal that we are all held to, and then they kind of knocked it out of the park. By the way, if you don't know Abigail's hair, it's literally a maple leaf, like the mohawk. So yeah, it matters a lot. I was so happy I finally got a Canadian. So for all the Filipinos out there that have their rep now in Street Fighter, congratulations. It's a good damn feeling. And as for Arjun in India, yes, technically Dalsum is a rep from India, but, that's a Street Fighter 2 character. It's been some years since Street Fighter 2. I think 1 or 2 people live in India. So yeah, another Indian rep, yeah, it makes sense. It's about time. Especially because, the Indian FGC is growing. So yeah, these new characters, this fresh blood to represent underrepresented areas, I think that's great. And then, of course, Bosch representing the very, he's from Nashal, what? So I don't know, but we get Bosch anyways. Moving on to World Tour and its fate. So Takayuki Nakayama says, yeah, there will not be any further updates to World Tour, but I'd like to keep the content maintained and perhaps convey some other narrative elements. And then Matsumoto adds, that sounds great. I'd certainly like the development team to be involved in that. So I know a lot of us were wondering, like, is World Tour actually done? Or maybe it was some specific wording. But no, World Tour is actually just over. Unless something else gets announced, there's nothing taking its place. And just sort of end of an era. So Ingrid is indeed the finale of World Tour. And that's why we get Bosch, I guess, because she rewound time to make sure Bosch didn't die. I know that content was not for everyone, but I enjoyed it myself, and I'm a little disappointed, I'm not gonna lie. So here's a big one. So when Street Fighter 6 started, apparently they had an internal goal of a 10-year life cycle. That's something we've been hearing a lot lately, say with like Marvel Tokon, right? 10 years is now the goal for a fighting game. And it looks like, at least in this stage, because we're beginning year 4, there is no current thoughts about a Street Fighter 7 anytime soon just yet. So they are still committed to Street Fighter 6 for the long haul. The producers also state that, yes, there's a lot more for the future of Street Fighter 6 to come, although maybe not so much in the way of mechanics. So via Dexerto here, Nakayama says, honestly, I feel that adding any more would make the game too complex. We released it in a state where the mechanics were already quite refined, so we aren't really planning on adding new systems at this stage. That said, we're conducting various experiments. Still, I wonder if there's anything we could potentially add down the line. Which is a bit odd, right? Because, like, yeah, we have a lot of new players, which is great. Like, you know, the player base is growing. Awesome. But part of Street Fighter's DNA is the game always grows over time. Like, besides just new characters, like new mechanics, new systems, new everything, right? That's why you get Super, Ultra, Champion Edition, like whatever you want to call it. But Street Fighter evolves, and this is the only Street Fighter that does not seem to evolve. Maybe don't mess with success is part of the argument. It certainly isn't hurting them at the moment, but I do find it, as a player myself, a little bit frustrating. And now to talk on the movie. Apparently, while things are seemingly going smoothly there right now, there was a little bit of trouble in paradise with the film. Again, via Dexerto here. So apparently the first run of the script was not up to snuff. The producer saying here, the first script they received was pretty rough. And exactly in the way you would imagine it to be, which, yeah, no, I can see it. We've been down that road before, right? So I'm assuming the rewrites helped make it more campy and fun like the original Jean-Claude Van Damme film versus some of the other stuff that's been put out there. The team at Capcom seemed to have a lot of faith in the movie, so here's hoping, right? It looks like good, silly fun. Here's hoping. One thing I actually did enjoy in a lot of these interviews here, they are willing to talk about other games. You would think, well, since they're competitors, we can't talk about it, yada, yada, yada. But no, for one, Virtua Fighter Crossroads, it turns out the Street Fighter team is quite excited for the game. Saying here that when looking at other fighting games from other companies, like the recent announcement of the new Virtua Fighter, I find myself genuinely excited, especially since I used to play the series myself. I'm really looking forward to see how this new Virtua Fighter turns out. And for Tekken 8 just got the recent Baki the Grappler collaboration with the new guest character of Yujiro, and they're saying, well, yeah, we've actually worked with Baki before, and we are willing to work with them again. Although for Tekken 8 specifically, they did have some concerns about power scaling. Yes, even the developers of the games are power scalers, right? And worrying how Yujiro will like power scale with the rest of the Tekken cast because he's too strong. And to close out a little bit here, it turns out Bosch, our boy Bosch, he was always the plan since day one, which I guess you could argue we always sort of knew, but it did take a while to get there, and then a little bit of retconning thanks to the power of a cosmic god rewriting history, just so he wouldn't die like a dummy. What is the true meaning of strength? Apparently it's friends in very high places. So that's some rapid fire Street Fighter 6 news for y'all. We got a 10-year plan for Street Fighter 6, and we're only beginning year 4. We got guest characters now with Tifa, we got new characters. They're making it sound like, yo, you can probably expect more guest characters down the line. We got the new movie coming out. Also mentioned in several interviews here, if you've never seen the Steam concurrent charts, which we argue about all the time on Twitter, Street Fighter 6 is the most popular it's ever been right now after Ingrid's release. So things are looking up on the Street Fighter front. So all the interviews will be linked for you in the video description if you want to check them out. But all that said, my friends, that's it for me, and that's it for the video. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some Street Fighter.